At exactly 1 minute ago, the fragile and tense geopolitical landscape of the Middle East fundamentally fractured into a chaotic theater of high-intensity warfare. As the Israeli Air Force initiated a breathtakingly massive, coordinated, and multi-domain preemptive strike directly targeting deeply buried and heavily fortified Iranian ballistic missile facilities, nuclear research compounds, and the elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps command nodes scattered across the vast and rugged terrain of Iran, simultaneously dragging the United States Navy into a ferocious ballistic missile defense operation and igniting unprecedented secondary escalations across the contested territories of Palestine, specifically within the densely populated and heavily militarized zones of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, where localized militant factions instantly recognized the shifting regional dynamics and moved to exploit the sudden vulnerability of the Israeli defense apparatus. The sheer magnitude of this military operation, carefully orchestrated in the stifling midsummer heat of July 2026, was designed not merely as a punitive measure, but as a definitive decapitation of the strategic military capabilities of Iran, intending to completely neutralize the existential threat that the Iranian regime has posed to the state of Israel for decades, while signaling an uncompromising posture to the entire world. In the profound darkness of the early morning hours, the tarmac of multiple top-secret Israeli air bases roared to life with the deafening thunder of dozens of heavily armed F-35 Adir stealth multi-role combat aircraft and heavily modified F-15 IRAM strike fighters, their advanced turbofan engines burning intensely hot as they accelerated down the runways, heavily laden with thousands of pounds of precision-guided bunker-busting munitions, advanced electronic warfare jamming pods, and highly classified autonomous targeting systems. The Israeli pilots, operating under the absolute strictest conditions of emission control, flew in complete radio silence. Their cutting-edge active electronically scanned array radars turned off to prevent any premature detection by the deeply layered and sophisticated early warning radar networks that Iran had spent billions of dollars assembling over the past several years. Instead of relying on their own active sensors, these Israeli stealth fighters utilized passive sensor fusion, perfectly integrating deeply encrypted real-time intelligence data, transmitted seamlessly via the secure Link 16 network from high-altitude reconnaissance drones and deeply embedded cyber intelligence assets that had already successfully infiltrated the air defense management systems of Iran. As the sprawling Israeli strike package aggressively penetrated deep into hostile airspace, weaving dangerously low through the twisting valleys and treacherous mountain ranges to perfectly mask their radar signatures in the physical ground clutter, the United States military apparatus was immediately forced from a state of heightened alert into absolute active combat engagement. In the strategically vital maritime corridors of the Red Sea and the heavily congested waters of the Persian Gulf, the United States Fifth Fleet, spearheaded by the immense nuclear-powered supercarrier the USS Abraham Lincoln and its powerful escort of Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, instantly sounded the general quarters alarm. Scrambling sailors from their racks as the blinding red lights of combat readiness bathed the claustrophobic steel corridors of the mighty warships. The American naval commanders, deeply aware of the catastrophic global economic implications of a full-scale regional war and the immediate threat to the global energy supply flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, authorized the immediate activation of the Aegis combat system at its absolute maximum processing capacity, turning the powerful Spy-1 radar arrays toward the Iranian plateau to meticulously track the inevitable wave of retaliatory ballistic missiles that everyone knew would soon flood the sky. The United States government, having closely coordinated intelligence sharing with Israel in the months following the collapse of the fragile ceasefire agreements earlier in the year, understood that the defense of Israel was paramount, yet they were acutely terrified of being dragged into a permanent, grinding ground conflict with Iran. Back over the skies of the Iranian heartland, the first wave of the Israeli stealth assault reached its designated release coordinates. plunging into sudden and violent action as the bomb bay doors of the F-35 fighters snapped open for only a fraction of a second. Releasing a devastating volley of precision, guided penetrator bombs that entered the atmosphere with a terrifying shriek before slamming violently into the reinforced concrete layers of the underground facilities located near Isfahan and Natanz. The kinetic energy of the impact was so monstrous that it created localized seismic tremors that were instantly detected by geological survey monitors worldwide, sending massive plumes of pulverized rock, twisted steel reinforcement bars, and burning rocket fuel hundreds of feet into the night sky, effectively blinding the immediate optical sensors of the defending Iranian forces. Almost simultaneously, elite Israeli cyber warfare units, operating from heavily guarded, air-conditioned underground bunkers located near Tel Aviv, executed a perfectly synchronized zero-day exploit attack against the national power grid of Iran, plunging the entire capital city of Tehran into total darkness and severely disrupting the command and control communication links between the supreme leadership and their forward-deployed missile batteries. The sheer shock and awe of the Israeli precision strike left the Iranian military establishment momentarily paralyzed, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, an organization deeply ingrained with a culture of martyrdom and aggressive retaliation, rapidly recovered from the initial paralysis and aggressively executed their pre-planned contingency protocols, initiating the largest single coordinated barrage of medium and intermediate range ballistic missiles ever witnessed in the history of human warfare. Deep within the subterranean missile cities hidden beneath the Zagros Mountains, massive hydraulic blast doors slowly groaned open, revealing the terrifying silhouettes of Shahab-3, Sejal, and Ahmad solid-fueled ballistic missiles, their sophisticated guidance computers rapidly receiving the final targeting coordinates of critical Israeli military installations, air bases, and deeply populated civilian centers. Within mere seconds, the dark Iranian sky was violently illuminated by the blinding, searing orange exhaust plumes of hundreds of missiles rocketing upwards, accelerating aggressively through the stratosphere to reach hypersonic velocities of over Mach 7. Their deadly payloads arcing high above the Earth before beginning their terrifying terminal descent toward the State of Israel. As the Iranian missiles traversed the immense distance across the Middle East, passing high above the sovereign airspace of several neighboring nations, the conflict instantly cascaded into the deeply volatile territories of Palestine, where the loud wailing of emergency air raid sirens violently interrupted the quiet night, sending hundreds of thousands of terrified civilians scrambling frantically for the inadequate shelter of concrete stairwells and reinforced safe rooms. In the heavily battered and war-torn enclaves of the Gaza Strip, and throughout the deeply divided and historically contested hills of the West Bank, various armed Palestinian factions, recognizing the profound distraction of the Israeli military apparatus, attempted to violently exploit the chaos by launching large swarms of unguided rockets and initiating aggressive ground skirmishes against Israeli Defense Force checkpoints along the extensively fortified buffer zones and the strategically critical Yellow Line. The Israeli Defense Forces, already stretched incredibly thin by the monumental requirements of a multi-front conflict, were forced to immediately deploy heavily armored Merkava main battle tanks, rapid response infantry units, and specialized counter-terrorism squads to forcefully maintain control over the Palestinian territories, engaging in brutal, close-quarters urban combat amidst the suffocating dust, burning barricades, and the deafening cacophony of small arms fire, all while the apocalyptic threat of Iranian ballistic missiles descended violently from the heavens above. It was a true nightmare scenario of multi-layered warfare, a desperate struggle for survival taking place simultaneously in the subterranean tunnels of Palestine, the crowded surface streets of Jerusalem, the high-altitude exosphere above the Middle East, and the deeply buried command bunkers of Iran. As the enormous Iranian ballistic missile swarm violently re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, glowing brightly with the immense frictional heat of hypersonic travel. The sophisticated multi-tiered air defense network of Israel, working in completely seamless electronic coordination with the forward-deployed United States naval forces. Sprang into aggressive and spectacular action. The highly advanced Arrow 3 exo-atmospheric interceptor system, designed explicitly to destroy incoming threats high above the Earth, launched dozens of incredibly fast kinetic kill vehicles that streaked upward on pillars of brilliant white smoke, rapidly accelerating to intercept the Iranian warheads in the cold, frictionless vacuum of space. The sky high above the region suddenly erupted into a series of brilliant, silent flashes of light as the Israeli interceptors violently collided with the Iranian weapons, utterly obliterating the deadly payloads and sending showers of burning, molten metal debris raining harmlessly down across the vast, empty expanses of the desert. However, the sheer volume of the Iranian saturation attack was deliberately designed to completely overwhelm the computational and physical limits of the Israeli defenses. And several heavily armored Iranian warheads managed to successfully slip past the outer defensive shield, plunging dangerously toward the coastal cities. In response, the David Sling medium-range defense system and the legendary Iron Dome short-range point defense system rapidly engaged, filling the lower atmosphere with hundreds of twisting, turning interceptor missiles that aggressively chased down the remaining Iranian threats, creating an intricate and terrifying web of exhaust trails and violent explosions that shattered windows and shook the foundations of buildings from Tel Aviv to Haifa. Simultaneously, the United States Navy destroyers stationed in the waters of the eastern Mediterranean and the Red Sea violently joined the frantic defense, firing volleys of highly advanced Standard Missile 3 and Standard Missile 6 interceptors from their vertical launch system cells, creating an impenetrable wall of steel and explosives that successfully neutralized numerous Iranian drones and cruise missiles that had been launched on low altitude. Sea-skimming trajectories designed to bypass the terrestrial radar networks of Israel. The incredibly complex integration of United States sensory data, seamlessly fused with the Israeli fire control computers, represented the absolute pinnacle of Allied military interoperability, proving definitively that the United States remained an utterly indispensable partner in ensuring the physical survival of Israel amidst a deeply hostile region. Yet, even as the incredible technological marvel of the combined Israeli and United States air defense systems managed to intercept the vast majority of the incoming Iranian munitions, the sheer scale of the conflict guaranteed that catastrophic damage was unavoidable. Several Iranian missiles, specifically designed with evasive maneuvering capabilities and terminal guidance phase decoys, managed to strike peripheral military targets and infrastructure nodes within Israel, creating massive craters, igniting enormous secondary fires, and sending thick, choking columns of black smoke billowing into the early morning sky. The psychological impact on the civilian population of Israel was immense, as millions of people huddled in terrified silence, listening to the continuous thunder of explosions and feeling the physical reverberations of the ongoing war raging right above their heads. Meanwhile, in the shattered concrete corridors of the Gaza Strip and the volatile streets of the West Bank in Palestine, the localized fighting intensified brutally, with desperate Palestinian militants utilizing incredibly cheap, mass-produced explosive devices and anti-armor rockets to ambush Israeli patrols, attempting to inflict maximum casualties, while the attention of the world was firmly fixated on the apocalyptic exchange of strategic weapons between Israel and Iran. The Israeli military commanders, forced into an impossibly complex two-front war, responded with overwhelming, disproportionate kinetic force, authorizing aggressive airstrikes utilizing heavy attack helicopters and armed unmanned aerial vehicles to systematically dismantle the Palestinian militant strongholds, further exacerbating the profound humanitarian crisis that had already plagued the region for entirely too many years. Back in the deeply fortified underground bunkers of Tehran, the supreme leadership of Iran, surviving the initial Israeli decapitation strikes thanks to heavily reinforced, deeply buried command centers, furiously analyzed the highly fragmented battle damage assessment reports filtering in from their decimated missile forces and severely degraded communication networks. Realizing that their massive retaliatory strike had been largely blunted by the incredible superiority of the combined Israeli and United States defense architecture, the Iranian commanders desperately pivoted to their highly asymmetric warfare playbook, activating their vast and deeply loyal network of regional proxy militias, including the heavily armed Hezbollah forces stationed in the rugged mountains of southern Lebanon, the battle-hardened Shia militias operating in the deserts of Iraq, and the deeply entrenched Houthi rebels controlling the strategic coastline of Yemen. Orders were aggressively transmitted via completely secure, redundant communication lines for these proxy forces to immediately initiate a massive, coordinated, multi-directional saturation attack against the borders of Israel, effectively attempting to overwhelm the exhausted Israeli defenses with a relentless, unending swarm of cheap, disposable suicide drones, unguided artillery rockets, and incredibly dangerous short-range ballistic missiles. The United States, anticipating this exact strategic escalation, aggressively moved to forcefully deter the Iranian proxy network, deploying incredibly powerful B-2 Spirit stealth bombers and heavily armed B-21 Raider aircraft from distant strategic air bases to conduct devastating, high-precision punitive strikes against the launching positions and weapons depots of the proxy forces across the entire region. The incredibly fierce United States intervention demonstrated an absolute, unwavering commitment to the defense of Israel, and a total refusal to allow Iran to successfully leverage its asymmetric network to achieve regional hegemony. As the sun slowly began to rise over the smoking, violently scarred landscape of the Middle East, casting long, eerie shadows over the freshly created craters and the smoldering wreckage of intercepted missiles, the absolute reality of this terrifying new regional war firmly set in. Israel had successfully executed a devastatingly precise preemptive strike, significantly degrading the strategic missile capabilities of Iran. Yet they now faced the incredibly daunting reality of a prolonged, grueling conflict against a deeply fanatical enemy that possessed an almost unlimited willingness to sacrifice its own people. The United States, despite desperately attempting to pivot its strategic focus toward other global geopolitical theaters, found itself once again hopelessly entangled in the incredibly complex and deeply violent web of Middle Eastern politics, actively engaged in direct, high-intensity combat operations against the armed forces of Iran and its numerous regional proxies, and caught hopelessly in the incredibly violent crossfire of this monumental clash of regional superpowers were the deeply suffering people of Palestine, whose own incredibly tragic and deeply complex struggle for self-determination and basic human survival was violently overshadowed and heavily suppressed by the apocalyptic exchange of strategic weaponry between the massive militaries of Israel, Iran, and the United States. The entire region, deeply fractured by decades of bitter historical grievances, profound religious extremism, and incredible geopolitical maneuvering, now balanced incredibly precariously on the absolute knife, edge of total, unmitigated annihilation. The Israeli Prime Minister, emerging from a deeply buried underground command bunker in Tel Aviv, immediately addressed the severely traumatized nation, speaking with absolute defiance and unwavering resolve, loudly declaring that the state of Israel would never, under any circumstances whatsoever, allow the Iranian regime to possess the military capability to threaten the existential survival of the Jewish people. Simultaneously, the supreme leader of Iran, broadcasting via heavily encrypted channels from an undisclosed subterranean location, loudly promised an incredibly fierce, endless holy war of absolute resistance, pledging that the blood of the martyrs would eternally fuel the righteous destruction of Israel and the complete, total expulsion of the United States military from the entire Middle East. The initial wave of incredibly violent, highly destructive strikes and incredibly desperate, heavily armed counter-strikes had finally concluded, but the incredibly complex, incredibly dangerous military maneuvering, the aggressive, deeply sophisticated electronic warfare jamming, and the desperate, heavily guarded diplomatic back-channel negotiations were only just beginning to truly escalate. The incredibly sophisticated, heavily armed navies, the highly advanced, deeply integrated air forces, and the incredibly fierce, heavily entrenched ground troops of Israel, Iran, and the United States now stood firmly locked in an incredibly tense, profoundly dangerous, incredibly complex Mexican standoff, heavily armed with the most incredibly destructive, technologically advanced conventional weapons ever conceived by the human mind, waiting in total, suffocating silence for the absolutely inevitable, incredibly violent, incredibly destructive command to unleash the incredibly terrifying second wave of this incredibly massive, deeply tragic conflict.